Companies like WeatherTech have relied on AmericanEagle.com's website design and development and hosting capabilities for years. When some of the world's top brands need a reliable company to prepare their sites for high-traffic events, who do they call? AmericanEagle.com. Their clients have come to rely on them for a full line of website services, from consulting and strategy to digital marketing, hosting, and maintenance. Give the team at AmericanEagle.com a call today. 1-877-WEB-NOW. The number 1 is the number. AmericanEagle.com is the website. 1-877-WEB-NOW-1 is the number.
It's never too early to think about what activities your son or daughter will do this summer. You want your kids to have fun during their break, but provide some structure and preparation for the next school year. Consider St. John's Northwestern Summer Academy in the beautiful Lake Country region of southeast Wisconsin. St. John's Northwestern Summer Academy offers fantastic summer programs, such as academic opportunities for personal success and adventure camp. Academic Ops offers 7th through 12th graders 5 weeks of summer classes supplemented with fun activities throughout. Adventure Camp is just how it sounds, an exciting camp that instills leadership, adventure skills training, and having fun. Consider St. John's Northwestern Summer Academy for your son or daughter with their overnight or day camp programs located in the beautiful Lake Country of Wisconsin, only 2 hours from Chicago. For more information, visit sjnma.org. That's sjnma.org.
AM 560, The Answer.
Dan and Amy and the NIMBY movement, long-standing. Could it be in jeopardy as a result of the YIMBY movement? NIMBY meets YIMBY.
NIMBY meets... What are these acronyms you speak of?
You don't know NIMBY?
NIMBY, I know NIMBY.
Not in my backyard,
Not
right?
yeah.
YIMBY, yes, in my backyard. An affirmation. This is being driven by millennials who don't have a backyard because they're living in mom and dad's basement, or they're renting because they can't afford to own a home. And this has actually been argued that one of the reasons you have young people more open-minded to the prospect of socialism than previous generations is because they don't see the economic upside that their parents and grandparents enjoyed in large measure through home ownership. And
they have to pay off their student loans. I mean,
but also access to homes the way that previous generations had access to them at price points relative to their earning power so that you could accumulate wealth over the course of your working life. That's a big deal. The question is, so why do we have these problems and what to do about it? Has government been the source of the problem, or is it the remedy? For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Conor Dougherty, economics reporter for the New York Times and author of the new book, Golden Gates, Fighting for Housing in America. Conor, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So,
I think you hit the nail on the head with the wealth accumulation thing.
Yeah, well, go ahead and develop that, and particularly as it pertains to the YIMBY movement led by younger people.
Well, the way I always say it is that many of the biggest problems in America today are at some level a housing problem. And just to pick the one that you touched on, which is basically economic or income wealth inequality, young people are not acquire. If you think about wealth inequality, it is almost all housing. There are a couple people who are multi-billionaires, but most of the real gap between the haves and have-nots in America is a function of housing wealth. And as you point out, that's okay if you feel reasonably confident that you can get on that escalator yourself. And many kids, younger, I mean, when I say kids, I mean people 25 to 35, don't feel that.
And so this seems to be the problems that you're describing and you describe in your book seem to be focused in major urban centers where the problem is perhaps most pronounced. But those are urban centers that are largely been governed by one party with a particular philosophy that talk a lot about affordable housing, that have all kinds of subsidy programs. So it seems like that model's not working.
Yeah, I mean, well, it is definitely true that it's not working. I try not to overdo the party stuff because local politics I find not to be terribly ideological in the way we think about it, red-blue.
Well, philosophy, though. I mean, the philosophy is, and this is in the suburbs, too. We know it well in Chicagoland. where you have, here the problem with not being able to afford to live in Winnetka, according to some, and those would be according to a lot of people in the city too, is, well, you need to you need to have the government essentially spearhead an affordable housing project. You need to be more open to increasing density in the community. And that's the same thing in the neighborhoods in Chicago, too, when we have programs like super vouchers where people with less means can live in neighborhoods in buildings with people with more means. But that hasn't worked. It works for individual people that are the recipients of those vouchers, I suppose. But it's not working as a categorical policy solution.
Well, yeah, totally. So what I totally agree with you. And, because if we don't have enough affordable housing, we're not going to have, it doesn't matter how many vouchers you have. It doesn't matter how many, $1 million condos you have. If we don't have enough housing for the population, we're going to have homelessness and people driving 3.5 hours to work and all the things we see. But I think that what I love about this book, what I loved about the reporting of the book, is that there's such an ideological spectrum here. I mean, this book is ultimately about the stories of people who are trying to change politics in housing. And some of them are hardcore libertarians who believe there should be very little regulation of any kind. Mm-hmm. Some of them are hardcore socialists who want to build public housing everywhere. And what I love about this housing issue is that it makes people question how ideological they really are. And that's why I think it really is it's where the rubber meets the road in terms of our kind of political identity. You can go to a suburb, the reddest suburb of Texas, where people talk about they hate the EPA or whatever, right? And they will tell you that their local government should have all sorts of regulations that prevent someone from building high-density housing near them. And I would say to them, well, what about the free market? If you want the free market, whoever owns that land next to you should be able to do whatever they want on that land, right? And then the flip side is you might go to San Francisco, where somebody who thinks they're the most liberal person in the world and environmental this and raise taxes that and Bernie that will, they're sort of quietly sitting on a $2.5 million house that they have very low property taxes on because of California property taxes. Yep. Yes, and they will tell you that you never be able to touch that property, and nobody should ever be able to build subsidized housing near them. And so I think in a weird way, what housing is so fascinating by is that it isn't red blue, and not only that, it shows how. I mean, I hesitate to use the word hypocritical, but it shows that our ideologies don't often apply to our backyard.
Oh, I know. Look, I agree with that. I think that's well said. And it's the old tale of the person gets across the bridge and then they want to cut the bridge for the person behind them. We see that with rent-seeking behavior in all shapes and forms. So it seems to me that, and I agree with you that the ideological distribution here, it's very interesting. And it seems to me the start of these conversations that needs to be about premises. Are we going to start from the premise that private property is the cornerstone of a free society and we're going to respect private property rights? Or are we going to start from the premise that, government is the driver of the equitable distribution of this resource called private property?
Well, so we're not going to get rid of the notion of private property in America. So whatever one thinks about that, that's not happening. So, but I do think that we should always be a little bit more honest with ourselves about what private property really means. In America, we have a number of tax schemes and other things that we set up to subsidize homeownership. The 30-year fixed mortgage is basically a creation of the government. The mortgage interest deduction, which has been essentially eliminated by Trump, which, that's a kind of a whole other thing we don't have to get into. But, the Trump administration, a lot of liberal kind of crusaders wanted to get rid of the mortgage interest deduction, and then Trump did it. So that's one place they actually kind of agree. But we do subsidize home ownership in all sorts of different ways. And also, look, where do we want to live in America? You look out an airplane window and you see all sorts of land, and you have, dreams of, wow, if they invented a teleportation machine, I could live anywhere and have a giant ranch. But That's not really how it works. The way it works is we want to live near whatever we want to live near, a field, a school, a cool retail strip. We have various preferences, and we kind of express them with our housing. And those preferences are very often a function of some kind of public system, right? Like the streets are public, the schools are frequently public. People frequently move to better public school districts, giant parks. The Chicago Zoo, there
The
are
lake,
all
the
sorts
ocean.
of,
Yeah, no, I get it. Okay.
yeah, and so I guess what I mean is that land, what I think that land is this place where it's so fundamental to who we are, pretty much defines our existence, that you can almost kind of prism whatever ideology you want onto it. If you want to say land is a free market, say it's a free market, but it's a free market that is largely determined by how close you are to public goods, right? I mean, so I think everything gets very topsy-turvy in land, and I really try to explore that from a lot of different angles through the eyes of a lot of different characters. In this book, there's like you said, this woman who starts this group called BARF, and the Bay Area Renters Federation, and she's this
Great acronym, yeah.
She's this kind of crazy, kooky person who shows up to city council meetings in leggings and a tank top and says, "You guys need to build more housing." And in San Francisco, they treat her like she's some libertarian shill. So that's what I loved about it, that the young people moving to San Francisco these days are kind of anti-regulation.
Whatever happened to the rent's too damn high guy in New York City? Yeah, this just sort of started this whole
he ran
movement.
for mayor, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I tell you one thing. That slogan has been adopted. What he should have done is copyrighted that slogan. He would be able to afford whatever rent he would want. So, because there was actually a big rent control campaign in California last year, and they kept saying the rent is too damn high, and I hear it everywhere. So, I'm only like half kidding that if he would have copyrighted that,
right.
And sold merch, he would have done great.
He is, Connor, I'm sorry, we got to let you go, but he is Conor Dougherty. He's an economics reporter for the New York Times. The book, Golden Gates, Fighting for Housing in America. Connor, thanks for joining us. Good luck with the book.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line. Coming up on Chicago's Morning Answer.
We'll revisit Trump's revisiting of the Oscars at 8:38.
But now let's head straight into the newsroom. Here is Mike Scott.
Amy and Dan, good morning. 15 degrees at 8:30, and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said moments ago a peace deal between the Taliban and the U.S. could be signed by February 29th, as long as the week-long reduction in violence continues to hold. Senator Elizabeth Warren says she will now begin accepting help from a super PAC in her presidential campaign. Warren, you may recall, had sworn off PAC money and corporate funding as she seeks the Democrat nomination for president. However, she has not stepped in after a political action committee called Persist PAC was formed this week and began running ads supporting her candidacy in Nevada. With Super Tuesday almost upon us and Bernie Sanders leading the PAC